My child, I see you. I see the exact moment your day ends, when the doors are closed, the lights are dimmed, and the heavy, crushing weight of exhaustion settles over your shoulders. You carry a weariness that reaches far deeper than your physical bones. It is a profound, aching fatigue of the soul. You have been fighting a relentless battle, day after day, hour after hour, and you feel as though you are standing on a war-torn battlefield, entirely alone. The thick smoke of the struggle surrounds you, and the noise of the conflict is deafening. You have been swinging a sword you can barely lift anymore, trying desperately to push back encroaching shadows. I know exactly how tired you are. I know what it feels like for you to simply draw a breath when the air inside your lungs feels so incredibly heavy. The endless striving has taken everything you have to give. You spend so much of your energy trying to convince everyone around you that you are perfectly fine. You put on a brave face, smiling when you are expected to smile. You offer words of encouragement to others while your own heart is quietly breaking inside your chest. You have become so skilled at hiding your pain from the world that you sometimes try to hide it from me. But I see the quiet, unguarded moments. I see you sitting in your car before you walk into the house, taking a deep breath, trying to summon just a little more strength to get through the evening. I see the heavy tears that slip down your face when you are in the shower, where no one else can hear you cry. I see the silent, desperate pleas for help that you whisper when you think no one is listening. You do not have to pretend with me. You do not have to be strong right now. You can let the heavy armor fall to the ground. You can let the mask slip away entirely. I am completely here with you, and I am not asking you to be unbreakable anymore. I know exactly what is keeping you awake at night. When the world grows quiet, your mind becomes a chaotic war zone. I see the terrifying financial pressures that loom over you like unscalable walls. I know the desperate math you try to do in the dark, the way you try to stretch resources that simply are not there, and the sickening feeling of panic that grips your stomach when you look at the uncertain days ahead. I see the broken relationships that leave a constant dull ache in your heart, the misunderstandings, the bitter words that cannot be unsaid, and the empty spaces left by those who have walked away. I know the silent anxieties that whisper cruel lies to you, telling you that you are falling behind, that you have fundamentally failed, that you are running out of time, and that the very ground is crumbling beneath your feet. You feel completely surrounded with no safe direction to turn. Everywhere you look, there is another fire to put out, another crisis to face, another heavy demand you cannot meet. You feel outnumbered by these adversaries. They circle you like an advancing army, closing in tighter with every passing day. The debt, the illness, the loneliness, the harsh critics, the blinding uncertainty, they all stand shoulder to shoulder, demanding your surrender. And you, my precious child, have been trying to fight every single one of them at the same time. You have been running from one edge of the battlefield to the other, trying to block every attack, trying to solve every problem, trying to anticipate every danger before it arrives. It is a terrifying, exhausting way to live constantly on guard, constantly expecting the next devastating blow. You feel as though if you close your eyes for even a single moment, if you let your guard down for just 1 second, everything you have fought so incredibly hard to hold together will completely shatter into a million jagged pieces. But I need you to hear my gentle voice right now, cutting clearly through the noise of your panic. I need you to feel my hand lifting your chin so that you can look directly into my eyes. I am not disappointed in you. I am not angry that you are struggling. I am not watching from a cold distance, judging your performance in this brutal battle. I am weeping with you. I am validating every ounce of your pain. Your feeling of being completely overwhelmed is entirely justified. You are facing massive giants, and giants are genuinely terrifying. You have tried so hard for so incredibly long, just to survive each day. You have given everything you have to give. You have poured out every drop of your emotional, physical, and spiritual energy. I see the monumental effort it has taken for you just to get out of bed some mornings. I recognize your deep resilience. I honor your quiet endurance. You have not failed because you did not try hard enough. You have fought valiantly. The reason this relentless striving is breaking you down is not because you are weak. It is not because you lack faith or because you are fundamentally flawed. The reason your current strategy of independent survival is completely crushing you is simply because you were never designed to carry this specific burden alone. I did not weave you together in your mother's womb to be your own savior. I did not form your beautifully intricate heart to process the crushing weight of the world's anxieties on your own. The human frame, as beautifully and purposefully as I created it, was never built to hold the pressure of tomorrow's unknown problems. When you try to control the final outcome of every crisis, when you try to be the ultimate protector and provider for yourself, you are stepping into a divine role that was only ever meant for me. You are wearing heavy, suffocating armor that was never fitted for you. You have carried this monumental weight for so long that you have forgotten what it feels like to simply rest. You have accepted this crushing anxiety as your permanent reality, believing that your days will always be defined by exactly how much you can endure. But I want you to know that your exhaustion is actually a sacred signal. It is your soul crying out for the peace that you were originally created to inhabit. The fatigue you feel is not a punishment, nor is it a sign that I have abandoned you in the wilderness. It is the natural consequence of a human heart trying to bear a weight meant for the creator of the universe. I never wanted you to live in this state of perpetual emergency. I never wanted you to view every single morning as the beginning of another terrifying war. You were made for so much more than endless survival. You were made to be loved, to be held, and to be profoundly protected. I want you to take a deep breath right now. Feel the air enter your lungs. That gentle breath is a direct gift from me. A quiet reminder that I am actively sustaining your life at this very moment. You do not have to fight for your next breath, and you do not have to fight for your future. I am inviting you into a completely different, peaceful reality. I am asking you to stop. Just stop. Stop analyzing the endless threats. Stop trying to predict the worst-case scenarios. Stop carrying the agonizing responsibility of your own deliverance. The battle you are fighting is very real. The enemies surrounding you are loud, and the danger feels intensely imminent. But your position in this conflict is about to radically change. You do not belong on this battlefield anymore. You have spent so much time staring at the adversaries, trying to strategize a desperate way through the front lines of this war. But I am gently placing my hands on your weary shoulders, turning you around. I am asking you to look away from the battlefield for just a moment. I am asking you to step back from the frantic, exhausting chaos of your own independent efforts. There is a completely different path forward, one that does not require you to swing your broken sword or hold up your impossibly heavy shield. Behind you, away from the deafening noise, I have been quietly working. I have prepared something profound and something exclusively for you. It is time to step away from the front lines, my child, and look toward the provision I have already meticulously prepared for your rescue. I know how intensely terrifying it feels to even consider stepping away from the front lines. Every natural instinct inside of you is screaming that if you do not hold the line, everything will immediately collapse. You have been taught by the world that survival depends entirely on your own strength, your own quick thinking, and your own relentless determination. When crises arise, your immediate response is to brace yourself to grip the reins even tighter, and to frantically search for earthly solutions. You start plotting, calculating, and trying to force doors open that I have gently and purposefully closed. I watch you do this. My child, not with anger or disappointment, but with deep, overwhelming compassion. Because I understand the immense fear that drives you. You genuinely believe that if you can just figure out the right strategy, if you can just work a few hours longer, or if you can just worry about the problem intensely enough, you might somehow guarantee a safe outcome for yourself and the people you love. You have slowly turned your anxiety into a twisted form of productivity. Somewhere along this painful journey, you convinced yourself that worrying is a responsible way to protect the life you have built. You lie awake in the darkest, quietest hours of the night, meticulously replaying every possible disastrous scenario, as if anticipating the worst will magically prevent it from arriving at your door. You treat your sleepless nights like a necessary down payment on your safety, believing that if you exhaust yourself agonizing over tomorrow, you are somehow controlling it. But I want you to look closely at what this endless strategizing is actually doing to your spirit. It is not protecting you. It is not altering the harsh circumstances outside your window. It is only draining the precious life, peace, and joy right out of your heart. Your anxiety is a false armor. It feels heavy and metallic, deceiving you into thinking you are shielded from the incoming arrows, but it offers absolutely no real protection against the trials you face. It only restricts your breathing limits, your spiritual vision, and leaves you completely depleted before the sun even rises. Why do you carry the heavy illusion that the final outcome depends solely on you? Who told you that you were responsible for orchestrating the complex details of the universe? When you look at the towering mountains standing directly in your path, the mounting financial deficits, the terrifying medical uncertainties, the fragile, fractured relationships, you automatically measure them against your own limited human strength. You look down at your empty hands and feel a crushing wave of despair, concluding that because you do not possess enough tangible resources to fix the problem itself must be entirely unfixable. This is the profound, blinding deception of self-reliance. It traps you in a microscopic view of reality, where the only possibilities that exist are the ones you can physically manipulate, logically explain, or financially afford. You have inadvertently placed the entire weight of your destiny on your own human capacity. That is a burden so immense it would crush anyone. I never asked you to be the architect of your own deliverance, and I never required you to outsmart your adversaries or outrun your trials. I want to gently lift the heavy, suffocating veil of guilt that you have been living under for so long. You have been secretly punishing yourself for not being able to solve the massive crises in your life. You look at your complete inability to fix the situation and you interpret it as a personal moral failure. You tell yourself that if you were just a little smarter, a little more capable, a little more financially secure, or even a little more faithful, you would not be trapped in this terrifying position. Hear my voice clearly right now, washing away that lie. Your inability to fix this is not a failure. It is simply the natural limitation of your human frame, and it is the exact, precise space where my divine intervention begins. Your emptiness is not a sign of my absence or my disapproval. It is the blank canvas upon which I am about to paint my greatest provision. When you finally reach the absolute end of your own strength, when you exhaust every single earthly option and realize you have nothing left to try, you have not reached a tragic dead end. You have merely reached the beautiful, necessary threshold of spiritual dependency. Look back at the exhausting battles you have been fighting over these past months and years. How much has your frantic, independent striving actually accomplished? Has the relentless, agonizing worrying added a single hour of peace to your life? Has the endless pacing across your bedroom floor in the middle of the night paid a single overdue bill, healed a single stubborn illness, or mended a single broken heart? You are pouring your precious energy into a bottomless well. desperately hoping that if you just pour a little faster, it will eventually fill up. But the well of human effort will always inevitably run dry when faced with true spiritual warfare. The adversaries you are facing right now, the deep-rooted paralyzing fears, the generational struggles, the overwhelming mountain-like circumstances cannot be defeated by human logic, clever negotiations, or physical endurance. They require a supernatural response. As long as you insist on fighting this battle entirely in the flesh, relying on your own intellect and willpower, you will remain trapped in this agonizing cycle of effort and exhaustion. I am gently asking you to surrender the illusion of control, because that illusion is the very chain that is keeping you bound. It takes a profound, almost unimaginable amount of courage to simply stop trying to fix everything. It takes immense bravery to stand in the middle of a raging storm, with the wind howling in your ears and the waves crashing against your knees, and consciously choose to drop your hands to your sides. The world will tell you, this is absolute foolishness. Your own logical mind will scream that it is dangerous and reckless. But in my kingdom, letting go of your own strength is the highest, purest form of wisdom. When you release your tight, white-knuckled grip on your problems, you are not giving up in defeat. You are simply handing them over to the only one who actually possesses the power to resolve them completely. I want you to feel the physical relief of that truth right now. Let your shoulders drop. You do not have to figure this out today. You do not have to have a flawless 10-step plan for your survival. You do not need to work any harder, think any faster, or push yourself completely to the breaking point. The rescue you are so desperately searching for will never be found in the depths of your own exhaustion. Your frantic search for earthly solutions has blinded you to the heavenly resources that are already at your disposal. When you panic, your vision narrows, and you only see the immediate threat standing in front of you. You miss the vast invisible armies of angels that I have deployed on your behalf. You forget the unshakable promises I have spoken over your life since before you were even born. Self-reliance demands that you stare at the storm until you figure out how to control the wind. But spiritual dependency invites you to close your eyes, feel my presence, and remember that I am the one who commands the weather. I am calling you out of the frantic, noisy marketplace of human striving, where everything depends on what you can earn, prove, or protect. I am dismantling the heavy, exhausting belief that your survival is entirely up to you. It is time for a radical, permanent shift in how you view this entire battle. You have been operating as a solitary, isolated soldier, deeply convinced that every outcome hinges on your performance. But I am shifting your identity in this very moment. I am moving you away from a posture of frantic warfare and leading you toward a posture of unshakable rest. This does not mean the problem vanishes instantly before your eyes, nor does it mean you become a careless, passive observer in your own life. It means your internal approach to the crisis is entirely, fundamentally transformed. Instead of engaging the enemy with your own fragile, broken weapons, you are going to learn how to stand securely behind my impenetrable shield. Instead of running yourself ragged, trying to force a victory that remains just out of reach, you are going to learn the quiet, majestic power of letting me fight for you. You are going to discover the profound secret that the greatest victories are never won by those who strive the hardest, but by those who trust the deepest. The time for fighting on your own is completely over. It is time to prepare your heart to receive what I have already set in place. Look with me now, just past the immediate noise of your adversaries. Turn your gaze away from the front lines and allow your spiritual eyes to adjust to a completely different reality. You have been frantically searching the horizon for an escape route, hoping to spot a sudden opening in the enemy lines where you could finally run for cover. You have been pleading for a new weapon, a stronger shield, or a sudden burst of adrenaline to help you fight your way out of this valley. But I am not handing you another sword. My child, I am not pointing you toward a distant bunker where you can hide until the danger miraculously passes. Instead, I am drawing your attention to the center of the battlefield, right in the very midst of the chaos you are so desperate to escape. There, in the very presence of the enemies that have surrounded you, I have deliberately and lovingly prepared a table. I want you to let the profound reality of this image wash over you, sparking a sense of wonder and unexpected relief in your weary soul. A table, not a war room, not a defensive barricade. A beautifully adorned, meticulously prepared banquet table set specifically for you. For generations I have whispered this promise to my children: I prepare a table before you in the presence of your enemies. This is not a metaphor meant merely to comfort you in theory. It is an active, unfolding reality happening in your life right at this very moment. When you expected a call to arms, I am issuing a deeply personal invitation to dine. When you thought you had to fight for your life, I am asking you to pull out a chair and sit down. I know how jarring this must feel to a heart conditioned to constantly defend itself. The very idea of feasting while under attack seems impossible to the human mind, but this is exactly how my kingdom operates. Walk toward this table with me and look closely at what I have laid out before you. This is not a makeshift arrangement thrown together because I was surprised by the attacks against you. Every detail has been intentionally designed for this exact moment of crisis. The table itself is carved from the unshakable timber of my eternal promises, sturdy enough to bear the full weight of every fear you have ever carried. It is draped in the spotless linen of my grace, covering every inadequacy and mistake you feel ashamed of. The light that surrounds this space does not come from the fading sun, but from my very presence, casting a protective glow that pushes back the shadows. And upon this table, I have set a feast of divine provision. There are vessels overflowing with my supernatural peace bread that restores your drained energy, and the oil of gladness meant to heal the deep wounds you have suffered in your struggles. You have been waiting for the storm to pass before you allow yourself to exhale. You have told yourself that once the financial crisis is entirely resolved, once the medical report is completely clear, or once the broken relationship is miraculously mended, then you will finally be able to rest. You believe that peace is the reward waiting for you at the end of the war. But I am telling you that this invitation is active right now, in the middle of your darkest, most chaotic hour. If I waited until all your enemies were destroyed before I fed you, you would starve on the battlefield. I do not wait for circumstances to be perfect to pour out my blessing. I set the table directly in the presence of your enemies. I am offering you an oasis of calm while the winds are still howling, granting you profound joy while the threats are still visible on the horizon. Do you see how much you are loved? Look at the care I have taken to prepare this space for you. Before this crisis ever touched your life, before this specific anxiety ever kept you awake at night, I was already setting this table. I knew exactly what you would face in this season. I knew exactly how exhausted you would be and how depleted your resources would feel. I was never caught off guard by the sudden turn of events that left you feeling so defeated. Instead, I used my perfect foreknowledge to ensure that exactly what you need to survive and thrive would be waiting for you right here. The provision for your current panic was prepared in eternity past. You have been frantically trying to gather enough strength for tomorrow, completely unaware that I have already cooked the meal, poured the wine, and set your name card at the place of highest honor. It is time to let your identity transition. For so long, you have seen yourself merely as an exhausted soldier, entirely defined by the scars of your battles and the heavy armor you force yourself to wear. You have believed that your worth is tied to how bravely you can fight and how well you can protect yourself. But as you stand before this table, I am asking you to take off the armor. Drop the shattered sword of your independent striving. You do not need it here. You are not just a soldier in my army. You are my cherished child. You are an honored guest, personally invited to dine with the King of Kings. I am pulling the chair out for you, inviting you to take your rightful seat at my table. Here you are entirely safe. Here you are profoundly valued. Here your only responsibility is to receive what I am so freely offering. The enemies you fear so deeply are still standing on the edges of the battlefield. They have not vanished into thin air. You can still hear their taunts. You can still see the terrifying shadows they cast. But I want you to notice something crucial as you step into the light of this table. They cannot approach it. There is an invisible boundary line drawn by my sovereignty that they are strictly forbidden to cross. They can make all the noise they want. They can posture and threaten, but they cannot reach out and touch you while you are seated with me. They are forced to watch as I honor you, feed you, and anoint your head with oil. Your presence at this table is the ultimate declaration of their defeat. They want you out there in the dirt, fighting on their terms, because out there, you are vulnerable. But here, seated at the banquet of my grace, you are entirely untouchable. I invite you to taste the provision I have set before you. When you finally sit down, you will realize that you have been starving for true spiritual nourishment. You have been surviving on the meager crumbs of your own willpower, running on the empty fumes of human endurance. But at my table, there is absolute abundance. There is no scarcity in my presence. You do not have to rush through this meal afraid that the enemy might suddenly charge. You can linger. You can eat slowly. You can breathe deeply. The provision I have laid out for you will not run out, and the peace I am pouring into your cup will continually overflow, no matter how desperately the world tries to drain it. Accepting this invitation is the most important step you can take right now. I know that looking at the table feels like looking at a miracle, but taking your seat requires a deliberate choice. You have to consciously decide to stop engaging with the chaos and start engaging with my peace. You have to choose to believe that my table is more real, more powerful, and more permanent than the temporary crises screaming for your attention. I am not forcing you to sit down. The invitation is given with gentle, unconditional love. I will stand here with you for as long as it takes for you to recognize that this is the only true place of safety. Look at the empty chair waiting for you. The battle you have been fighting has left you hollow, but this table will make you whole again. Yet even as you look upon this perfectly prepared table, I feel the hesitation trembling in your spirit. I see the way your eyes dart back to the encroaching shadows, checking to see if the adversaries have moved any closer. Your mind is struggling to accept that you can simply sit down while the threats remain visible and active. The very thought of pausing your relentless efforts feels inherently dangerous to you, as if resting is a form of giving up. You are wondering how you can possibly justify taking a seat of honor when the war around you is still raging so violently. I understand this deep psychological resistance, and I know exactly why your heart is so afraid to be still. When you have spent months or even years constantly bracing for the next inevitable disaster, stillness feels incredibly dangerous. You have been harshly conditioned by a demanding world to believe that constant motion is your only true defense against catastrophe. If you are worrying, at least you feel like you are doing something productive. The thought of pulling out this chair and sitting down at my table while those unpaid bills are still piled high on your kitchen counter feels completely irresponsible. How can you possibly rest when a terrifying medical report is still sitting in its envelope, unchanged, and looming over your future? How can you feast when loud critics and heavy, unfair expectations are still shouting your name, eagerly, waiting for you to stumble. You look at the beautifully prepared table, and then you look back at the raging storm, and your mind screams that taking a moment to breathe is the exact same thing as raising a white flag of surrender. You are terrified that the moment you close your eyes and stop furiously managing the crisis, the fragile walls you have been desperately holding up will immediately crash down upon you. I see this immense fear. My child, and I do not condemn you for it. It is a completely natural human response to overwhelming pressure. But I want to gently expose this fear for what it truly is, a calculated lie, whispered by the enemy of your soul. The adversary does not want you to sit at my table because he knows that the moment you accept my peace, his power over you is completely broken. He wants to keep you permanently trapped in a vicious cycle of panic, where your vision is so clouded by anxiety that you cannot see my provision. He knows he cannot actually destroy you, so his strategy is to keep you running on a treadmill of endless striving until you collapse from exhaustion. He wants you to believe that if you just worry a little more, you will finally figure it out. But anxiety is a cruel master. It demands all of your energy and gives you nothing in return. The lie tells you that frantic activity keeps you safe, when in reality, it is the very thing keeping you completely drained and vulnerable. I need you to understand a profound mystery of my kingdom resting at this table is not an act of surrender to your problems. It is the exact opposite. Sitting down with me in the middle of your crisis is the highest, most powerful form of spiritual warfare you can ever engage in. The world fights with aggression, with raised voices, with frantic negotiations, and endless sleepless nights. But my children fight differently. When you choose to step away from the chaos and take your seat at the banquet I have prepared, you are making a bold, definitive declaration. You are looking directly at the mountains standing in your way and announcing that they are no longer your responsibility to move. You are transferring the full weight of your battle from your own frail, exhausted shoulders onto my infinite, unshakable strength. Shakeable. Do you realize how much courage it takes to do this? It takes far more bravery to sit still in the presence of danger than it does to flail wildly in the flesh. Anyone can panic. Panic is the default setting of a world that does not know me. Anyone can obsess over worst-case scenarios and try to manipulate circumstances to feel a false sense of control. But to stand in the eye of a raging hurricane, surrounded by genuine threats, and deliberately choose to sit down at a table of grace that requires supreme supernatural trust. It requires you to believe that my unseen hand is far more powerful than the visible storms raging around you. Stopping your frantic activity is not a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate evidence of your faith. I want to absolutely dismantle the heavy, suffocating guilt you feel whenever you try to rest. For so long you have lived under the punishing belief that if you are not actively suffering, you are not working hard enough to solve your problems. You feel a deep, nagging sense of shame whenever you try to take a breath, as if experiencing joy or peace during a trial is a betrayal of your responsibilities. You think to yourself that you have no right to be at peace while your life is in such turmoil. But my child, that guilt is a heavy chain I never asked you to wear. I did not prepare this lavish table to mock your responsibilities. I prepared it to give you the strength to face them. Resting is the vital, non-negotiable nourishment you desperately need in order to survive the seasons when everything is falling apart. Your stillness is not negligence. It is the very foundation of your true deliverance. When you finally take your seat, an incredible shift begins to happen in the spiritual realm. Your stillness becomes a weapon that completely disarms the adversary. The enemies circling you are fully prepared for your panic. They are expecting your tears, your desperate bargaining, and your exhausting attempts to fight back on their terms. They feed off of your anxiety and grow stronger with every sleepless night you endure. But when you refuse to give them the reaction they are demanding, when you sit down, lift your chin, and partake in the feast of my peace, they are thrown into utter confusion. They do not know how to defeat a warrior who refuses to leave the table of the king. By choosing to rest, you are declaring that your joy is not tethered to your bank account. Your peace is not dependent on a medical diagnosis, and your worth is not defined by the loud criticizing voices of those who do not understand your journey. You are untying your heart from the unpredictable circumstances of this world and anchoring it securely to the eternal reality of my love. I place this table in the direct presence of your enemies, so they would be forced to witness your elevation. I want them to see that despite everything they have done to break you, they could not stop me from blessing you. Let go of the rigid belief that your survival depends on your anxiety. The enemy has convinced you that worry is a protective shield, but it is actually a blindfold, keeping you in the dark. Take it off right now. Open your eyes and look at the massive spread of grace I have placed before you. I know your hands are trembling as you consider letting go of the control you have fought so incredibly hard to maintain. I know your heart is racing at the thought of doing nothing while the storm rages on, but I am right here with you. I will not let you fall. You can completely trust me with the unpaid bills and the terrifying medical reports. You can hand over the broken relationships and lay every single heavy burden at the foot of this table. Taking your seat is the ultimate declaration that you belong entirely to me. It is a visible, undeniable statement that you are no longer an orphan fighting for scraps in the wilderness, but a beloved child residing safely in my house. The moment you sit, the heavy, suffocating air of the battlefield is replaced by the fragrant, life-giving breath of my spirit. The deafening noise of your fears is completely drowned out by the steady rhythm of my heartbeat. I am calling you to be brave enough to be entirely still. I am asking you to fight back, not with more physical effort or crushing anxiety, but with an unshakable, profound rest. Do not let the enemy convince you for one more second that you are losing ground by sitting with me. You are actually claiming the highest, most fortified ground possible. You are moving out of the vulnerable trenches of human effort and walking directly into the impenetrable fortress of my divine presence. Let the critics shout their worst. Let the storms rage violently outside. Let the financial ledgers look completely impossible. None of those things can ever breach the sacred perimeter of this table. Your stillness is a weapon, and your quiet confidence in my protection is exactly what will confuse and defeat the adversity surrounding you. I know why it has been so incredibly difficult for you to trust this protection. For a very long time, you have been walking through a dry, barren wilderness, and the most agonizing part of that journey was not the intense heat of the sun or the rough, broken terrain beneath your feet. The most agonizing part was the silence. You have cried out to me in the middle of the night, your voice cracking with deep desperation, begging for a single sign that I was still there. You have laid on your bedroom floor, completely shattered and exhausted, pleading for immediate rescue, only to hear the heavy, hollow echo of your own prayers bouncing off the ceiling. In those dark, terrifying moments, you genuinely believed that I had turned my back on you. You looked at the mounting crises in your life, the towering financial deficits, the frightening diagnoses, the crumbling relationships, and you concluded that because you could not see my hand moving, I must have abandoned you to face the wolves entirely on your own. That piercing feeling of divine silence is one of the deepest, most confusing pains a human heart can endure. The enemy used that prolonged silence to plant poisonous seeds of doubt in your weary mind. He whispered that your struggles were absolute proof of my indifference. He told you that you were entirely forgotten, just another victim of random cruel circumstances in a chaotic, uncaring world. You absorbed that lie, and it broke your heart into pieces. You started to believe that you had to fight so fiercely, because if you did not defend yourself absolutely, no one else would. You built a fortress of anxiety because you felt spiritually orphaned. I want to speak directly to that specific hidden wound right now. I want to pull back the heavy curtain of your wilderness season and show you the breathtaking reality of what was actually happening while you thought you were completely alone. I was never absent. My child, I was never distant, and I was never for a single second ignoring your tears. While you were weeping in the dark, assuming I had left you to be destroyed, I was actively, intensely working behind the scenes on your behalf. You were looking for a sudden dramatic rescue, a lightning bolt from heaven that would instantly evaporate your problems and instantly change your circumstances. But the victory you need for this specific season of your life could not be rushed. True lasting deliverance is rarely built in a single fleeting moment. I have been meticulously orchestrating a complex, beautiful tapestry of circumstances, carefully aligning elements of your life that you did not even know existed. You thought the table I have prepared for you was just a sudden afterthought, a last-minute reaction to your panic. But a feast of this magnitude requires deep, divine preparation. Think about the massive unseen resources required to secure your victory. While you were pacing the floors, agonizing over the lack of immediate answers, I was quietly moving the hearts of people you have not yet met. I was rearranging schedules, shifting resources, and aligning the exact right individuals who will soon be instrumental in your breakthrough. I was preparing the environments you will soon walk into. I was actively closing the wrong doors. Those painful rejections that broke your heart and made you feel like a profound failure, specifically to protect you from settling for anything less than the perfect provision I had planned. The delays that frustrated you so deeply were never meant to punish you. They were the precise, loving measurements of my divine timing, ensuring that when the door finally opens, you will be completely ready to walk through it, and the provision waiting on the other side will be exactly what you desperately need. Your human eyes are naturally bound by time and space. You only see the immediate danger standing directly in front of you. You only see the terrifying medical report in your hand today, the unpaid bill sitting on your kitchen counter this afternoon, or the painful unresolved conversation from yesterday. But I sit completely outside of time. I see the entire beautiful trajectory of your life, from your very first breath to your final moment on earth. Because I see the end from the beginning, I know exactly what kind of strong foundation you need to sustain the immense blessing I am about to pour out on you. If I had answered your prayers on your preferred timeline in the exact way you demanded months ago, it would have been a fragile, temporary fix. It would have placed a simple bandage over a deep wound that required permanent spiritual healing. I loved you far too much to give you a premature, incomplete victory. I want to replace your lingering feelings of deep isolation with a profound, breathless sense of awe at my meticulous care for you. You have felt like a tiny, insignificant boat tossed around by the random, violent waves of a dark, uncaring ocean. But I need you to hear this truth. You have never been the victim of random hardship. Every single wave, every sudden gust of wind, and every dark night in that wilderness was carefully measured and filtered through my sovereign fingers. You are the focal point of my intentional loving preparation. Even the darkest, most terrifying moments of your struggle were not wasted. They were not signs of my anger. They were the very canvas upon which I have been carefully painting my greatest masterpiece of provision. Do you see how incredibly carefully you are loved? I did not just throw some meager scraps together to keep you from starving on the battlefield. I have been intentionally preparing a royal banquet. The oil of gladness that will soon soothe your deep emotional wounds took time to press. The bread of life that will restore your drained physical energy took time to bake in the fires of your trial. The rich wine of joy that will replace your sorrow took time to mature. The agonizing time you spent waiting was actually the exact time I spent perfectly preparing. The wilderness was not a lonely graveyard where your dreams were sent to permanently die. It was the quiet, hidden sacred space where your greatest victory was being carefully crafted. I know that the waiting stretched your faith to the absolute breaking point. I know there were heavy days when you genuinely felt like you could not physically or emotionally survive another hour of the intense pressure. But look at you now, seated safely at this table. You are still breathing. You are still standing. You survived the brutal wilderness not because of your own frantic, exhausted efforts, but because my invisible loving hand was constantly sustaining you from underneath. Even when you could not feel my presence, my grace was acting as a powerful shield around your mind, preventing the darkness from entirely consuming you. I caught every single tear you cried in the quiet dark. I documented every moment of your profound exhaustion. Nothing you have endured has gone unnoticed, and absolutely nothing you have suffered will be left unredeemed. As you look at this beautifully prepared table, I want you to fully exhale the heavy, suffocating burden of the wilderness. Let go of the painful, deeply rooted belief that you are alone in this universe. You are completely surrounded by the brilliant, undeniable evidence of my unseen work. The provision sitting right in front of you is the physical manifestation of months and years of divine orchestration. The breakthrough you are stepping into is not a lucky coincidence or the result of a sudden random turn of fate. It is the deliberate, calculated, and overwhelming response of a father who has been fiercely protecting his child from the very beginning. You are completely safe here in my presence. The long, silent nights of wondering if I care about you are permanently over. You do not need to try and decipher the divine silence anymore because the extravagant feast speaks entirely for itself. You do not need to question my timing ever again because the table is fully set right now. In this exact appointed moment, the unseen has finally become gloriously seen. The hidden preparations are now ready to be fully enjoyed. Take a deep restorative breath, and let the beautiful truth of my sovereignty anchor your weary soul. You are not a forgotten wandering orphan. You are the honored guest of the King. Everything that happened in the confusing shadows of your life was deliberately leading you to this very seat in this very hour. The masterpiece of your rescue is completely finished. And now that you recognize the immense loving effort that went into setting this table, it is time for your heart to fully engage with what is sitting upon it. You have spent so much time staring at the barren wilderness and analyzing the terrifying threats that surround you. But now that you are safely seated in my presence, your eyes must undergo a necessary transition. To truly experience the deep peace I have prepared, you must be willing to change the focus of your gaze entirely. When you first sit down at this beautifully prepared table, your natural instinct is to keep looking over your shoulder. You have spent so many agonizing months out in the wilderness, constantly scanning the horizon for the next disaster, that your eyes have become trained to seek out danger. Even now, wrapped in the safety of my presence, your gaze darts back to the shadows. You watch the unpaid bills, the medical reports, and the broken relationships pacing angrily at the edge of the light. You study their movements. You calculate their distance. You're trying to listen to my voice, while simultaneously keeping a watchful eye on the storm believing that this divided attention will somehow keep you safe. But I am gently reaching out across the table right now. I am placing my hands gently on either side of your weary face, and I am drawing your eyes directly into mine. I need you to look at me, my child. I need you to look only at me. There is a profound spiritual law that governs the condition of your heart. Whatever you focus your attention on will naturally magnify in your soul. Your gaze acts like a powerful lens. When you stare endlessly at the towering waves of your circumstances, those waves grow larger and more terrifying in your mind until they entirely block out the sky. When you fixate on the voices of your critics or the mounting numbers of your financial deficits, those obstacles expand until they feel like impenetrable mountains. If you stare at the storm, you will inevitably drown in the fear of it, even while seated at a table of grace. The adversaries surrounding you know they cannot cross the boundary line to destroy you, so they employ their only remaining strategy. They try to capture your attention. They make loud, sudden noises. They cast long, threatening shadows. They desperately want you to keep looking at them, because they know that as long as they hold your gaze, they still hold your peace captive. This is why I am asking you to practice the daily intentional discipline of spiritual attention. Taking your eyes off the enemy is not a reckless act of ignoring reality. It is a deliberate act of anchoring yourself to a higher reality. When you look directly into my eyes, the terrifying perceived size of your problems immediately begins to shrink. The mountains that looked completely unscalable from a distance suddenly become small and insignificant when compared to the infinite boundless landscape of my power. The storms that sounded incredibly fierce fade into a weak, distant hum when you tune your ears entirely to the steady, reassuring rhythm of my heartbeat. I want to cultivate a connection with you so deep and so intimate that the world around you simply loses its ability to make you panic. I want to lovingly challenge a habit that has kept you trapped in a cycle of despair for far too long. You have spent countless hours rehearsing your tragedies. You lie awake in the dark, meticulously replaying the painful memories of those who have hurt you. You practice the conversations you wish you had gotten right. You visualize the worst possible outcomes for tomorrow, narrating a story of your own defeat over and over again until it feels like absolute truth. You recite your failures, your fears, and your limitations like a script. But I am asking you to hand that script over to me right now. It is time to stop rehearsing your tragedies and start rehearsing my promises. I want you to fill your mind with the unshakable words I have spoken over your life. Instead of repeating the grim statistics of your situation, I want you to whisper the truth of my faithfulness. Remind yourself of the times I've rescued you in the past, when the waters were rising, and I parted them at the very last second. Speak my grace into the empty spaces of your anxiety. When the enemy whispers that you are entirely forsaken, I want you to look across this table and remember that you are profoundly chosen. The more you rehearse my promises, the more those promises will expand within your heart, pushing out the heavy, suffocating shadows of doubt until there is absolutely no room left for fear to reside. This table I have prepared for you is not merely a place of physical refuge or a temporary shelter from the storm. It is a place of sacred, deeply intimate communion. It is the holy space where your exhausted spirit meets my infinite spirit. When you fully bring your attention to this communion, something miraculous happens. The frantic, demanding noise of the world outside begins to fade away, completely drowned out by the gentle, life-giving whisper of my love. You stop feeling like a victim cornered by cruel circumstances, and you begin to feel like a beloved child sitting quietly with their father. In this space of sacred focus, you do not need to constantly defend yourself because my gaze is entirely fixed upon you, and my eyes are filled with absolute unwavering approval. Allow yourself to truly see me in this moment. See the compassion in my eyes as I look at the heavy burdens you have carried for so long. See the quiet, unshakable authority that commands the very winds and waves you are so terrified of. I am not anxious about your tomorrow. I am not pacing the floors of heaven, wondering how we are going to get you out of this current crisis. I am seated in perfect peace, and I am inviting you to share in that exact same peace. When you lock your eyes onto mine, you are tethering your fragile, weary heart to an anchor that cannot be moved by any earthly force. You are drawing strength directly from the source of all life. As you commit to this deliberate shift in perspective, you will begin to notice a beautiful, tangible change taking place inside your physical body. The tension that has been tightly coiled in your shoulders for months will finally start to release. The shallow, rapid breathing that accompanied your endless panic will slow down, replaced by deep, restorative breaths of my spirit. The sharp, constant ache in your chest will soften. You will wake up in the morning, and before the heavy dread of your circumstances can rush in to crush you, you will consciously choose to fix your eyes on my goodness. You will start to experience a genuine, undeniable decrease in your daily anxiety, not because the problems have instantly vanished, but because the problems have entirely lost their power to command your attention. This is the quiet daily victory of the table. It is the profound realization that you do not have to wait for the world to be perfect in order to experience perfect joy. By choosing where to place your focus, you are taking back the territory the enemy stole from you. You are reclaiming your mind, your emotions, and your spiritual vision. Every time you consciously turn your head away from the threat and look back toward my grace, you are engaging in a monumental act of worship. You are proving that my love is far more captivating to you than the enemy's intimidation. I know it will take time to retrain your spiritual eyes. There will be moments when a sudden crash of thunder makes you instinctively look back at the storm. When that happens, I will not condemn you. I will simply reach out, gently, touch your chin, and redirect your gaze back to the safety of my face. We will practice this together, day by day, hour by hour, until looking at me becomes your most natural reflex. I want your immediate response to every new crisis to be a deepening of your gaze into my promises. You are doing so beautifully, my child. I see the immense effort it takes to trust me when everything around you is screaming for you to panic. But as you keep your eyes locked on mine, letting the noise of the battlefield fade into the background, a profound internal transformation is quietly taking place within you. Your heart is being fortified. Your spirit is being completely renewed. And the deep, paralyzing fear that once controlled you is being permanently dismantled. This quiet, steady anchoring of your soul is absolutely essential because this profound inner shift must fully take root before the next stage of your rescue can unfold. The internal stillness you are cultivating right now is beautifully paving the way for the great revelation of how I operate in the darkness. As your anxiety melts away under my gaze, you are finally ready to understand the vital sequence of my grace. As you settle into this stillness and keep your eyes locked on mine, you are finally ready to understand the beautiful vital sequence of my grace. I know how deeply you have been longing for a sudden dramatic rescue. Since the moment this heavy storm began to rage, your most desperate tear-filled prayers have been for an immediate magical fix to your external circumstances. You have asked me to instantly wipe out the mounting financial deficit, to immediately erase the terrifying medical diagnosis, and to abruptly change the minds of the people who have caused you so much relentless pain. You want the towering mountain standing in your path to simply vanish into thin air before you have to take another exhausting step. I understand this deep desire completely. It is not a sign of weak faith. It is the natural, honest cry of a human heart that has been pushed to the absolute limits of its endurance. You are simply tired of having to be strong. You believe that the only possible way you can finally experience rest is if the crisis is entirely removed from your life. But I want to gently reveal a profound spiritual law to you right now, a sacred principle that will govern the rest of our journey together. My peace always precedes my miracle. I do not operate in the way the frantic, demanding world expects. The world tells you that your earthly circumstances must be absolutely perfect before your heart can be calm. It insists that you can only stop worrying once every single threat has been permanently eliminated. But in my kingdom, the sequence is entirely reversed. I pour out my unshakable peace right in the middle of the raging chaos, long before the external circumstances ever change. This is the sequence of grace. If you look closely at the table I have prepared for you in the presence of your enemies, you will notice that the very first course I am serving is an overwhelming supernatural calm that defies all human logic. I am not handing you a finalized bank statement, a signed medical clearance, or a perfectly restored relationship as your first provision. I am handing you my peace. I am giving you a quiet, profound rest that makes absolutely no sense, given the severity of the battle still raging just a few feet away from where you sit. You might be wondering why I choose to do it this way. You might be asking your own heart why a loving father would not simply snap his fingers and make your agonizing pain disappear instantly. Listen very carefully. My precious child, if I were to simply remove the external problem without first changing your internal world, I would be leaving you completely vulnerable to the enemy's next attack. If I instantly cleared the path, but left you carrying the exact same heavy anxiety, the same deep-seated fears, and the same desperate need to control everything around you, then the very next storm would absolutely devastate you all over again. The next time a mountain appeared on your horizon, you would immediately return to the exact same cycle of panic, sleepless nights, and frantic self-reliance. You would spend your entire life living in sheer terror of the next crisis. My goal is not just to deliver you from this temporary problem. It is to deliver you from the suffocating grip of fear entirely. I want to change your heart so profoundly that you never have to live as an exhausted prisoner to your circumstances again. True deliverance is always an inside-out process. I am doing a deep restorative foundational work in your soul right now that is far more critical than merely shifting the earthly circumstances around you. I am strengthening your spiritual spine. I am expanding your emotional capacity to hold immense joy, even when the world feels impossibly heavy. When I grant you my unshakable peace, while the enemy is still aggressively circling the table, I am completely breaking the adversary's power over your mind. By giving you this profound internal stillness first, I am proving to you that your joy is not tethered to your bank account. I am showing you that your worth is not dependent on the approval of loud, unfair critics. I am demonstrating that your ultimate safety is not reliant on a flawless medical chart. I am making you absolutely bulletproof to the uncertainties of tomorrow. When you learn to rest in my presence, while the storm is still loud, you strip the enemy of his greatest weapon against you, your own panic. I want to completely free you from the agonizing, breathless wait for your circumstances to change. You have been holding your breath for so incredibly long, telling yourself that you will finally exhale the very day the physical miracle formally arrives. You have put your entire life, your deep joy, and your daily peace completely on hold. waiting for the external victory to validate your faith. You are treating the present moment as nothing more than a painful waiting room. But I am lovingly commanding you to exhale right now. Let the heavy breath out of your lungs. Drop your shoulders. The internal stillness you are beginning to experience at this table is not a temporary substitute for the miracle you asked for. It is the absolute, undeniable proof that the miracle is already actively on its way. When you feel that sudden, inexplicable quietness settle deeply over your chest, when you look directly at the unpaid bills, the frightening reports, or the complicated relationships, and suddenly feel a wave of profound, illogical peace wash over you, that is not your mind playing tricks on you. That is the gentle, steady rumble of my approaching provision. That supernatural calm is the very shadow of my hand moving forcefully in your direction. It is the absolute guarantee from the Creator of the universe that I am actively working on the solution. You do not have to wait until the battle is formally declared over to start celebrating. You can celebrate the internal victory of this profound rest right this very second. Taste the deep peace I'm offering you at this table. Let it sink deep into your exhausted bones. Let it gently rewire your anxious racing thoughts. Let it wash away the bitter abrasive residue of the long wilderness you have just walked through. This peace is the vital, non-negotiable nourishment you desperately need to sustain the massive blessing I am preparing to release into your physical reality. If I handed you the blessing before you had the peace to carry it, the blessing itself would become just another source of profound anxiety for you to manage. You would worry about losing it just as fiercely as you worried about obtaining it. But because you are receiving my peace first, you will be able to hold the coming miracle with open, grateful hands, rather than a tight, terrified grip. Because you have chosen to sit with me, and because you have bravely taken your eyes off the roaring storm to fix them entirely upon my face, you are now perfectly positioned to receive the fullness of my grace. You have allowed me to do the necessary invisible and sometimes painful work within your heart. The frantic panic that was breaking you down just hours ago is slowly being replaced by a quiet, majestic confidence. You are no longer desperately demanding an immediate fix because you have finally realized a life-changing truth. Having me intimately with you in the middle of the storm is infinitely better than facing a clear sky entirely alone. You are learning to feast on my presence, completely untroubled by the timeline of your external deliverance. This is the most beautiful, liberating place a human soul can ever reach. You are seated at the banquet table, surrounded by visible enemies and towering problems. Yet you are completely, undeniably undisturbed. The glorious sequence of grace is actively unfolding within your spirit. The supernatural peace has fully arrived, which means the physical miracle is merely a matter of time. And yet, even as this profound truth settles beautifully into your spirit, I know there is still one subtle lingering thief trying to steal your joy from the very edges of the table. I know that even as you begin to trust my inside-out process, your human mind is still painfully aware of the ticking clock, and the heavy, suffocating pressure of earthly deadlines continues to whisper urgent lies into your ear. I hear that ticking clock in the background of your mind. Even as you begin to embrace the profound peace I am offering, there is a loud, rhythmic drumming, trying to break your focus. It is the sound of earthly deadlines rapidly approaching. I see how you look at the calendar on your wall, or the dates on those unpaid bills, and your chest tightens with a fresh wave of panic. The enemy knows that if he cannot completely destroy your faith in my power, he will attempt to destroy your trust in my timing. He whispers urgent, frantic lies into your ear, telling you that time is rapidly running out. He points to the passing days, the advancing months, and the changing seasons, using them as evidence that I have somehow forgotten your case. He makes you feel as though you are permanently falling behind, watching helplessly as doors of opportunity slowly swing shut before you can reach them. This deep anxiety surrounding time is one of the heaviest burdens you carry. You live under the constant suffocating fear that it is simply too late for you. You look at where you are right now. Compare it to where you desperately hoped you would be by this age or this stage of your life, and you feel a crushing sense of failure. You wonder if your past mistakes have disqualified you, or if my delay is a silent form of punishment. When you see others around you receiving their breakthroughs, stepping into their miracles, and moving forward in their journeys. That ticking clock sounds like a mocking judge, declaring that your season has passed, and your chance for a beautiful life has permanently expired. You have waited so faithfully for so incredibly long, and the frustration of watching your situation seemingly grow worse while you wait is stretching your human endurance to its absolute breaking point. But I need you to look across this table right now and understand something fundamental about who I am. I am not bound by the ticking of your clock. Time is a boundary that I created for humanity, but it is not a boundary that contains me. Time is my servant entirely subject to my command. I do not wear a watch, my child. I do not pace the golden floors of heaven, frantically trying to meet an earthly deadline. I am never rushed. I am never late. And I am absolutely never caught off guard by a sudden turn of events in your life. When the world tells you that a situation is urgently expiring, it is speaking from a place of limitation. But I operate from a place of infinite sovereignty. I can accomplish more in a single perfectly appointed second than you could ever accomplish in a decade of frantic, exhausting human striving. The heavy waiting period you have been enduring is not a punishment. I want to wash that lie completely out of your mind right now. I have not been delaying your rescue because I am angry with you or because I am ignoring your desperate cries for help. This prolonged season of waiting is a sacred, necessary incubation. Think of a seed planted deep within the dark, heavy soil. To the human eye, it looks buried. It looks as though nothing is happening, and the waiting feels like an agonizing eternity. But beneath the surface, exactly where you cannot see, a profound transformation is taking place. The seed is breaking open, sending roots deep down into the earth, so that when it finally breaks through the surface, it has the foundational strength to withstand the violent winds. Your waiting season has been this deep, vital root work. If I had answered your prayer, the very first moment you asked for it, on your preferred human timeline, you would have received a much smaller, fragile version of the victory I actually have planned for you. You were asking for a temporary bandage, a quick way out of the immediate pain. But I am preparing a permanent generational triumph. I am orchestrating a miracle so profound and so completely detailed that it required this exact amount of time to properly set in place. The people who need to be positioned for your breakthrough had to be prepared. The resources that will sustain you had to be aligned. The waiting was never a denial. It was the essential divine preparation for a blessing far greater than your human mind could have ever comprehended or planned. I am inviting you to make a profound physical and spiritual offering at this table today. I want you to take your calendars, your rigid deadlines, your meticulously calculated timelines, and your desperate ultimatums, and I want you to lay them all down right here in front of me. I know how tightly you have gripped them, believing that if you just manage the schedule perfectly, you can somehow force the breakthrough to happen. But that grip is only causing your hands to bleed and your heart to break. Give me the heavy burden of the clock. Surrender your desperate need to control the when and the how. When you finally release these human timelines, you will feel an immediate breathtaking weight lift off your weary shoulders. Imagine the immense relief of no longer having to be the master conductor of your own life's orchestra. You do not have to cue the instruments. You do not have to perfectly time the rising crescendos of your circumstances. You can simply take your seat rest in my presence and allow me to direct the beautiful symphony of your deliverance. The adversary wants you to believe that every day you wait is a day entirely wasted. But in my kingdom, nothing is ever wasted. Every single tear you have cried in the waiting room, every moment of deep frustration, and every silent prayer whispered in the dark has been carefully collected and utilized to craft this coming victory. I am redeeming the time you thought was lost forever. I am restoring the years that the locusts have eaten, and I am doing it with perfect, flawless precision. Your mind screams that the medical report demands an answer today, or that the financial deficit must be resolved by the first of the month, or that the broken relationship will permanently shatter if it is not fixed by tomorrow. But I am asking you to trust my calendar over your own. Trust that I love you far too much to let a single arbitrary earthly deadline ruin the magnificent plans I have ordained for your life. Even if the deadline passes and the situation seems to entirely die, remember that I am the God of resurrection. What looks like a permanent ending to your human eyes is merely the spectacular, dramatic setup for my greatest work. I am famous for stepping into the story on the fourth day, long after the world has declared the situation completely hopeless, just to prove that my timing is always perfect. I want you to exhale deeply right now. Let the breath leave your lungs in a long, continuous sigh of complete surrender. Feel the frantic, nervous energy draining away from your muscles. You do not need to rush anymore. You do not need to panic about tomorrow. And you absolutely do not need to mourn the time you feel has slipped through your fingers. The table is perfectly set. The host is completely in control. You can finally rest in the absolute, unshakable certainty that my appointed time for your breakthrough is perfectly synchronized. I have woven every single detail of your past, your present, and your future into a beautiful, seamless tapestry of grace. The sequence of grace is working flawlessly within you. You have accepted my unshakable peace in the midst of the storm, and you have finally laid down the heavy, exhausting burden of your own timeline. You have stopped looking at the ticking clock and started looking intently into my eyes. You are sitting completely still, entirely anchored in the safety of my presence, fully trusting the divine pacing of this profound rescue. And now, because your hands are finally empty of your desperate striving and your anxious deadlines, they are completely open and ready to receive. The anxiety that was starving your soul has been gently washed away, leaving you beautifully prepared for the incredible feast that is sitting right in front of you. It is time, my beloved child, to look down at what I have actually placed upon this table. It is time to discover exactly what I have prepared to heal the deep, lingering aches of your long, weary journey. Look closely at the banquet set before you. You have been starving for so long. The relentless, agonizing battle you have been fighting did not just drain your physical energy. It entirely hollowed out your spirit. You've been surviving on the meager, stale crumbs of your own willpower. You wake up in the morning feeling profoundly empty, looking at the heavy demands of the day, and whispering in the dark that you just do not have enough left to give. That deep sense of inadequacy, that painful, persistent feeling of being fundamentally insufficient for the massive challenges ahead, has been your constant companion in the wilderness. You have looked at the terrifying giants in your life and concluded that because your hands are empty, you are going to be entirely destroyed. But as you sit at this table, bathed in the warm, protective light of my presence, I want you to see that your long season of spiritual starvation is officially over. There is absolutely no scarcity here. There is no rationing of grace. I have not set down a meager, insufficient portion just to help you barely limp through another painful day. I have laid out a lavish, overflowing feast of divine provision, meticulously chosen and perfectly prepared to satisfy every single ache, every hidden weakness, and every empty space within your weary soul. Reach out and take the bread I have placed before you. This is not the fragile, temporary sustenance that the world offers. When you rely on the world for your strength, you get fleeting bursts of adrenaline, a frantic, nervous motivation that burns out as soon as the pressure returns, leaving you infinitely more exhausted than you were before. But this is the true bread of life. As you partake of it, I want you to feel a deep, miraculous restoration taking place within your physical and emotional frame. This heavenly nourishment is specifically designed to fortify the exact places where you feel the most vulnerable and broken. It replaces your persistent aching fatigue with a quiet, enduring strength. You have told yourself for so many months that you simply do not have the energy to face tomorrow, to have that incredibly difficult conversation, or to look at those intimidating medical and financial ledgers one more time. But as this divine strength fills you, you will realize a beautiful truth. You no longer have to manufacture your own courage. The energy you need to step forward is not something you have to desperately summon from within your depleted human reserves. It is a magnificent gift you are freely receiving right now from my limitless storehouses. Beside the bread, turn your attention to the cup I have poured for you. It is not half empty, nor is it merely full to the brim. It is completely overflowing. This is the cup of pure, unshakable joy. For so long, your days have been steeped in the bitter, stagnant waters of grief and heavy disappointment. You have tasted the sharp, metallic tang of betrayal, the suffocating sorrow of lost opportunities, and the stinging salt of your own endless tears. The enemy tried his absolute hardest to convince you that this bitterness would be the permanent, inescapable flavor of your life. He wanted you to believe that you would never again know what it feels like to laugh freely without a dark shadow of dread hanging over you. But as you drink from this cup, I am washing away the harsh, abrasive residue of your long wilderness. This joy I am giving you is not a fragile, temporary emotion dependent on perfect earthly circumstances. It is a deep, unshakable spiritual wellspring that runs far underneath your current pain. It is a majestic gladness that boldly defies the darkness surrounding you. It gives you the supernatural ability to smile, to breathe deeply, and to find immense radiant beauty in this exact moment, even while the battle lines are still drawn just outside the light of this table. And now feel the gentle, loving touch of my hand as I pour the oil of gladness over you. This sacred oil is for the deep, hidden wounds that absolutely no one else sees. You have carried silent, agonizing scars from the loud critics who completely misunderstood your heart, from the unfair, crushing expectations of others, and from the personal failures that made you feel entirely unworthy of my love. You have been bleeding emotionally for months, quietly trying to bandage your own shattered heart, while simultaneously continuing to fight a war on the front lines. But my oil is a healing, restorative balm of perfect grace. As it flows gently over your weary mind and your broken spirit, it entirely softens the hardened, calloused places of your soul. It instantly soothes the burning sting of past rejections and permanently seals the painful, jagged fractures left by your traumas. You do not have to carry the agonizing pain of those old wounds into your bright future. The lasting healing you have so desperately searched for in the apologies of others or in the fleeting validation of the world is being fully, perfectly, and intimately applied to your heart, right here in the quiet safety of my presence. As you take in the overwhelming, breathtaking abundance of this feast, I am actively, permanently replacing your poverty mindset with a true kingdom mindset. The harsh wilderness taught you to think exactly like a beggar, always scrounging for meager scraps of hope, always anticipating the absolute worst outcome, and always believing that you are just one tiny mistake away from total ruin. You have lived with a clenched fist, terrified that whatever little peace you managed to find would be instantly snatched away from you. But you are not a beggar. My precious child, you are a beloved heir to the Creator of all things. Look at the immense, immeasurable value I have placed upon you by setting this table. I would never have prepared a banquet of such heavenly royalty if I did not see you as absolutely worthy of it. Every single thing you thought you lacked to face your future. The clear wisdom for the complex decisions. The enduring patience for the broken relationships. The unshakable courage for the terrifying unknowns is already sitting right here on this table, waiting for you to simply claim it. You no longer need to wander through the desolate places of this world, desperately hoping someone will offer you a morsel of comfort or a drop of security. The world's storehouses are empty, driven by fear, and limited by human frailty. But my storehouses contain an infinite supply of exactly what you need. When you feel a sudden wave of inadequacy try to wash over you, I want you to remember the weight of the bread in your hands. When you feel the familiar tug of despair trying to pull you back into the dark, I want you to remember the sweet taste of the overflowing cup on your lips. When the voices of doubt try to remind you of your past failures, I want you to feel the healing, fragrant oil resting upon you, marking you as completely forgiven, thoroughly restored, and permanently chosen. This feast is changing your very spiritual DNA. It is fortifying your spirit so completely that when you finally stand up from this chair, you will not be the same exhausted, terrified person who sat down. You will carry the absolute abundance of this table inside of you, making you entirely immune to the spiritual starvation of the world around you. You are rich in grace. You are thoroughly fortified in spirit. You are completely and perfectly equipped for whatever comes next in your journey. The emptiness that used to define your days has been entirely swallowed up by my overflowing provision, as this profound divine nourishment deeply satisfies your soul, and as the reality of your absolute worthiness settles into your heart, you are finally strong enough to take the next crucial step. The fear has been silenced, the anxiety has been washed away, and you are entirely filled with my unshakable peace. But to truly watch me move the mountains in your life, there is one final act of release required of you. You are holding something in your hands that does not belong at a banquet of grace. As this feast fortifies your spirit, you are finally ready to do the one thing that will allow me to completely finish this battle on your behalf, preparing you to empty your hands entirely, so I can step forward as your ultimate defender. Look down at your hands. Right now. My child. Look very closely at what you are still gripping so tightly. Even as you have tasted the life-giving bread and drank from the overflowing cup of my joy, your fingers are still wrapped fiercely around the heavy, rusted weapons of your own self-defense. I see the sharp, meticulously crafted arguments you have forged in the dark. I see the heavy iron shield of bitterness you have pulled over your heart to keep the pain away. I see the desperate burning need to retaliate, to prove your innocence, and to strike back at the people and the circumstances that have caused you such profound agony. You are sitting at a magnificent banquet of limitless grace, surrounded by the overwhelming warmth of my presence, yet you are still armed for a brutal, exhausting war. I know exactly why you picked those weapons up in the first place. When you were wandering through the cold, harsh wilderness, you felt completely abandoned and entirely exposed. You thought you had to fight for your own survival because it seemed like no one else was going to fight for you. When people misunderstood your intentions or spoke cruel lies against your character, you naturally forged a sword of justification to protect your reputation. When you were deeply betrayed by those you trusted, you built a massive, impenetrable wall of cynicism to ensure that no one could ever get close enough to wound you again. You have become a weary, traumatized soldier, constantly sleeping with one eye open, always anticipating the next inevitable strike. You truly believe that if you put these defensive weapons down for even a single second, your adversaries will immediately rush in and completely destroy you. You think your anger and your arguments are the only things keeping you safe. But I want you to look around you at the beauty of this table. Look at the overwhelming supernatural peace that is currently holding back the storm. You are no longer alone in the wilderness. My child, you are sitting in the sacred protective shadow of my presence. To sit at a banquet of infinite love, while still tightly clutching the jagged weapons of human retaliation, is a profound spiritual contradiction. You cannot fully experience the depth of my unshakable peace if your mind is secretly occupied with planning your revenge. You cannot receive the gentle restorative healing of my oil if your hands are completely full of your own heavy defenses. As long as you insist on fighting your own battles, you are effectively telling me that my protection is insufficient. You are telling me that you trust your own fragile, exhausting efforts more than you trust my sovereign power. I am asking you for a profound act of vulnerability right now. It is the most courageous thing you will ever do. I am lovingly asking you to formally and completely lay down your weapons. Take the carefully constructed arguments you have been rehearsing in your mind for weeks, the imaginary conversations where you finally corner your critics and prove to everyone that you were right all along, and place them gently on this table. Take the bitter, toxic resentment you have harbored toward the people who betrayed you, the deep, dark desire to see them experience the exact same agonizing pain they caused you, and release it completely into my hands. Drop the heavy, exhausting need to constantly defend your reputation. Let go of the frantic, consuming urge to control the narrative of your life. When you finally release your grip on these things, you are not surrendering in defeat to your enemies. You are surrendering exclusively to me. You are bravely stepping out of the way so that I can step forward. I am your ultimate defender, and my defense is absolutely impenetrable. When I shield you, no weapon formed against you can ever prosper. When I fight for you, the victory is absolute and permanent. Your human attempts at justice are flawed, severely limited, and ultimately exhausting to your soul. If you strike back in your own strength, you will only perpetuate the endless cycle of pain, and you will become exactly like the adversaries who hurt you. But my justice is perfect. I see every hidden tear you have cried in secret, I have heard every whispered lie spoken against you behind closed doors. I know the exact truth of your heart, and I know exactly how to vindicate you in a way that will leave the entire world completely speechless. I know it feels incredibly terrifying to sit completely unarmed in the presence of your adversaries. Your logical mind is screaming in panic, telling you that you are making a fatal mistake, that you are leaving yourself completely exposed to the wolves. But you are not exposed. You are entirely covered, surrounded on every single side by my fierce, unrelenting love. Your enemies are watching you right now, from the edges of the light. They are waiting eagerly for you to strike back, because your anger and your frantic retaliation are the only languages they understand. If you fight them on their terms, they can engage you. But when you refuse to retaliate, when you consciously choose to lay down your sword and calmly continue eating the magnificent feast, I have provided you completely paralyze their strategy. Your quiet, unarmed trust in my defense is the most powerful, devastating weapon in the entire spiritual realm. It confounds the darkness. It proves that their intimidation tactics have entirely failed. Feel the profound physical relief that washes over your body as you finally unclench your tired fists. Notice how your breathing immediately deepens when you no longer have to carry the crushing, suffocating weight of your own self-preservation. You have spent so much vital, precious energy over the years trying to be your own savior, your own lawyer, and your own bodyguard. You were never meant to carry those heavy titles. My beloved child, you were only ever meant to be my child. Let me bear the full crushing weight of this battle. Let me deal with the loud critics, the terrifying medical impossibilities, the overwhelming financial deficits, and the towering obstacles that have kept you paralyzed in fear for so long. You do not need to say another word in your own defense. You do not need to send that angry message. You do not need to prove your worth to people who are entirely committed to misunderstanding you. I will speak for you, and when I speak, the very foundations of the earth tremble. By emptying your hands of all your human effort and all your desperate striving today, you are doing something incredibly beautiful and deeply necessary for your future. You are ensuring that when the massive, undeniable breakthrough finally arrives, and it is arriving very soon, you will know without a single shadow of a doubt that you did not manufacture it. You will not have to look back and wonder if your clever arguments, your exhausting manipulation of the circumstances, or your sleepless nights of planning were what finally saved you. You will know with absolute unshakable certainty that the triumph belongs entirely to me, and because the victory is completely mine, it will be permanent. It cannot be dismantled. It cannot be stolen back by the enemy. And it cannot be reversed by human hands. It will stand forever as a towering monument to my faithfulness in your life. Your hands are finally empty. Your heavy, battered heart is entirely surrendered. You are sitting quietly at the table, completely defenseless in the eyes of the frantic world. Yet you are vastly more powerful and completely protected than you have ever been in your entire life. You have stopped fighting the agonizing war you were never meant to win on your own, and you have finally started resting in the absolute assurance of my love. This deep, profound surrender is the exact spiritual posture required to receive the miracle. You have allowed my peace to settle your mind. You have let go of the burden of the ticking clock. You have tasted the infinite abundance of my provision, and you have permanently laid down the heavy weapons of your own defense. Now that you have completely stepped out of the way, yielding the entire battlefield to my sovereign command, the true spectacular vindication can finally begin to unfold before your very eyes. Now that you have completely stepped out of the way, yielding the entire battlefield to my sovereign command, the true spectacular vindication can finally begin to unfold before your very eyes. I want you to sit back in your chair for a moment. Keep your hands resting gently on the table, entirely empty of your old weapons and your heavy defenses, and slowly look out past the warm, radiant light of this feast. Look closely at the edges of the room, right where the light meets the darkness. I want you to observe the very adversaries that have kept you completely paralyzed in fear for so incredibly long. For months and even years, you have stared into that darkness, trembling at the imposing silhouettes of the massive giants that surrounded you. You have looked at the towering walls of your financial debt, the terrifying reality of your medical diagnoses, the loud, relentless critics who slandered your name, and the painful betrayals of those you trusted. And you believed a terrifying lie. You believed they had encircled you to entirely destroy you. You thought you were hopelessly trapped in a deadly, inescapable ambush. But as the brilliant, holy light of my presence continues to push back the shadows, I am revealing the absolute breathtaking truth of your situation. Those enemies are not a firing squad waiting to execute you, my child. They are a captive audience. They have been entirely forced by my sovereign hand to stand exactly where they are, completely paralyzed, so they can watch as I profoundly bless, honor, and elevate you. Think about the magnificent, deeply intentional way I have set this scene. I could have easily prepared this banquet for you in a completely empty, peaceful room, far away from the battlefield. I could have swept every single adversary out of your life long before I ever invited you to sit down and rest. But if I had done that, your enemies would have simply waited for you in the shadows, hoping to attack the moment you left the safety of my presence. You would have spent the rest of your life nervously looking over your shoulder. I intentionally prepared this table directly in the presence of your enemies, so they could witness exactly who you belong to. I brought them to the very edge of the light, so they could see with absolute clarity that you are perfectly protected, completely cherished, and utterly untouchable. They have not vanished yet, but look closely at them now. Look at how they flinch in the blinding radiance of my glory. They cannot cross the boundary line I have drawn around this table. They cannot reach out and touch a single hair on your head. They have been entirely stripped of their authority to harm you. The threats that sounded so deafening when you were wandering alone in the wilderness are now completely, undeniably impotent. Notice how the angry, mocking voices of your critics fade into pathetic, empty whispers when I speak your true name. Notice how the intimidating, unscalable mountain of your financial ruin loses its terrifying height when placed next to the infinite, boundless wealth of my heavenly kingdom. Notice how the frightening diseases and the painful physical afflictions that aggressively threaten to end your story have absolutely no power to dictate your ultimate destiny while I am sitting across from you. They may still be visible in your periphery, lingering in the dark, but they are entirely toothless. They are like heavy iron chains that have been shattered. They might still look heavy, but they no longer have the strength to bind you. The enemy is like a roaring lion, kept tightly on a short leash. He can make a great deal of noise to try and distract you, and he can pace angrily back and forth, but he is absolutely incapable of closing his jaws around you. Every single weapon they forged against you in the dark has been permanently neutralized in the blazing light of my grace. I want you to experience a monumental, life-altering shift in your perspective right now. Since the moment this agonizing storm first began, you have operated under the terrifying assumption that you were trapped by your problems. You have felt like a helpless prisoner surrounded on every side by walls of impossible circumstances that were slowly closing in to crush the life out of you. You believed that your pain was the warden, and your fear was the locking mechanism on your cell door. But I want you to look deeply into my eyes, and then look out at the enemies circling the table. You are not trapped by them. They are trapped by me. Your problems are entirely surrounded, overwhelmed, and dwarfed by the magnificent, infinite presence of my glory. The sickness that terrified you in the middle of the night is now completely trapped in the presence of the ultimate healer. The debt that made your stomach turn every time you opened your mail is trapped in the presence of the infinite provider. The confusion, the lies, and the vicious slander that broke your heart are completely trapped in the presence of absolute, undeniable truth. They are the ones who are cornered. My beloved child, they are the ones who have been summoned to this table to face their own absolute defeat. They thought they were marching toward your funeral, but I have forced them to stand as silent witnesses at your coronation. As this profound realization settles deep into your spirit, feel the emotional atmosphere around you completely change. The deep, exhausting rest I first gave you when you sat down is now beginning to rise and swell into something even more powerful. The quiet peace is transforming into a rising, undeniable sense of spiritual dominion. You are no longer just a weary, traumatized survivor seeking temporary refuge from a brutal war. You are an honored heir sitting in absolute authority next to your king. The last lingering shadows of fear that were hiding in the corners of your mind are being entirely consumed by this quiet, triumphant confidence. You realize with breathtaking clarity that you do not ever have to cower in the presence of these adversaries again. You can look directly at the very things that kept you awake at night, shaking with anxiety, and instead of shrinking back in terror, you can eat the bread and drink the cup with complete, unshakable assurance. Feel the massive strength of this dominion flowing through your veins. This is not the arrogant, fragile confidence that the world offers, which cracks and crumbles the moment circumstances become difficult. This is a holy, deeply rooted authority that comes exclusively from knowing exactly who is defending you. When you fully understand the total impotence of the surrounded enemy, your entire physical posture changes. Your shoulders are no longer bowed down under the crushing, suffocating weight of intimidation. Your head is lifted high. Your breathing is steady and deep. You are finally seeing your life through my eyes, viewing your circumstances from a position of ultimate heavenly victory, rather than a position of terrifying earthly vulnerability. The adversaries that tried to shame you, break you, and permanently steal your future are now being forced to watch as I publicly pour my favor over your life. They are witnessing the complete humiliating failure of their own plans. They are watching helplessly as the very trials they meant for your destruction become the exact platform I use for your spectacular elevation. The stones they threw at you to bury you are the very stones I am using to build the foundation of your massive breakthrough. They have to watch as the pain they caused you is beautifully transformed into the greatest testimony of your life. This is the profound, breathtaking reality of the table I have prepared for you. It is a place of total miraculous reversal. You walked into this space feeling like a defeated, exhausted victim, desperately hoping just to survive one more agonizing night. But you are seated as a conqueror. You are completely untouchable. You are entirely immune to the poison of their threats, shielded by a grace so incredibly powerful that it renders every single attack entirely useless. The storm may still be raging in the far distance, and the enemies may still be standing stubbornly at the edges of the light, but they have absolutely no jurisdiction over your joy, your peace, or your future. They are utterly powerless to stop what I am doing in your life. You have fully embraced the truth that while the world around you may be completely chaotic, the ground you are currently standing on is completely sovereign territory. Rest deeply in this triumphant confidence. Let it thoroughly wash away the years of deep insecurity and paralyzing dread. You do not have to fight the chained lions. You do not have to argue with the silenced critics. You absolutely do not have to negotiate with circumstances that have already been decisively defeated by my hand. Your only task is to remain right here completely focused on the lavish feast I have provided, resting in the overwhelming assurance that I have already secured your complete deliverance. The fear that dictated your every move has been permanently broken. You have been fully restored, beautifully empowered, and completely elevated above the fray. And now, as you sit in this place of ultimate untouchable authority, completely unafraid of the powerless shadows surrounding you, you are perfectly prepared to experience the most intimate and overflowing demonstration of my love. Let me gently place my hands over your eyes for just a moment, my child, not to hide you from the world, but to softly wipe away the remaining scales of earthly limitation that have clouded your vision for so long. When I pull my hands away, I want you to open your spiritual eyes and look at this banquet through an entirely new lens. The intimate and overflowing demonstration of my love that you are about to experience is not a new weapon for the battlefield, nor is it a strategy for tomorrow's struggles. It is a profound, earth-shattering revelation of truth. Take a deep, slow breath and look at the space around you. I want you to realize that the massive, definitive victory you have been so desperately begging me for is not a distant future event that you must anxiously wait for. It is a present, fully completed reality. For months, you have been crying out in the dark, pleading with me to step into your tomorrow and secure your rescue. You have treated this table as a temporary shelter, a quiet waiting room where you could gather just enough strength to eventually go back out and face the storm. But I am telling you right now, with absolute unwavering authority, that the waiting is completely over. The finish line is not miles ahead of you, hidden behind the next terrifying mountain. You have already crossed it. The magnificent miracle you have been hoping to eventually see is no longer just a beautiful promise written on a page. It is a tangible physical reality unfolding right before you in real time. I know your human mind struggles to comprehend this. You look at the adversary still frozen at the edges of the light, and you hear the distant fading rumble of the thunder, and your logic tells you that the war must still be active. But I want to show you exactly how the spiritual realm operates. The battle was not won when the circumstances around you finally looked perfect. The battle was decisively, permanently won the very moment you made the courageous choice to pull out this chair and sit down in faith. When you refused to panic, when you chose to trust. My unseen preparation over the visible chaos of your life. You struck the final fatal blow to the enemy's agenda. That singular act of trust was the turning point of your entire life. When you deliberately opened your hands and laid your heavy rusted weapons upon this table, you did not just surrender your right to retaliate. You triggered the absolute completion of your deliverance. By stepping out of the way and letting go of your frantic need to control the narrative, you gave me total jurisdiction to finish the work. And I have finished it. My child, the war you have been fighting in the spiritual realm is already entirely concluded. What you are experiencing right now in the physical realm is simply the glorious, inevitable aftershock of a triumph that has already been permanently recorded in heaven. Look at the feast I have laid out before you. Really look at it. This is not emergency provision. I do not serve the bread of life and the overflowing cup of joy as mere survival rations for a weary soldier about to be sent back to the front lines. This table is a monument. It is the ultimate, undeniable monument of your complete victory. In ancient times, when a great king entirely defeated an opposing army, he would set a massive banquet and his soldiers would feast in the presence of their captured enemies to celebrate a war that was officially over. That is exactly what you are doing right now. You are not eating to prepare for a fight. You are feasting to celebrate a battle that I have already won on your behalf. I want this overwhelming, undeniable realization of total triumph to flood your exhausted soul. Feel the last stubborn remnants of your doubt instantly dissolving in the warmth of this revelation. The deep, agonizing exhaustion that has lived in your bones for years, the weariness of constantly bracing yourself for the next disaster, is melting away right now. You do not have to hold your breath anymore. You do not have to nervously check the horizon to see if the victory is finally on its way. The victory is sitting right here at the table, sharing a meal with you. I am your victory. And because I am entirely present with you, your triumph is absolutely complete. The circumstances that caused you such profound terror are currently being actively dismantled and rearranged by my angels, completely synchronizing with the victory that has already been declared over your life. The financial doors you thought were permanently locked have already been unsealed in the spiritual realm. The physical healing you have been crying out for has already been firmly established. The broken relationships and unfair judgments that weighed so heavily on your heart have already been resolved by my perfect justice. The physical world is simply catching up to the spiritual reality that I have already finalized. Every single piece of your shattered life is right now locking perfectly into place, entirely orchestrated by my loving hand. As this magnificent truth settles into the deepest parts of your spirit, let a profound, breathless awe wash over you. It is the breathtaking realization that you did not have to earn this rescue. You did not have to fight your way out of the darkness, and you did not have to figure out a clever escape route. All you had to do was trust me enough to sit down, and I took care of absolutely everything else. Feel the pure, unadulterated gratitude rising in your chest. Let it push out the last lingering traces of sorrow, the heavy burdens of your past, the mistakes, the betrayals, the profound losses are entirely dissolving in this moment. They cannot survive in the radiant healing light of my fulfilled word. The frantic anxieties about your future are permanently disappearing too. How can you possibly be anxious about tomorrow when you are seated at a victory banquet today? The future is no longer a terrifying unknown wilderness where you have to desperately scavenge for survival. It is a paved, brightly lit highway of my favor, entirely secured by the triumph you are celebrating right now. You have transitioned from the agonizing hope of a desperate captive to the settled, unshakable reality of a liberated heir. Rest in this breathless gratitude, my beloved child. Let the tears of relief fall freely onto the table. These are no longer the bitter, burning tears of grief that you wept in the dark. These are the sweet, cleansing tears of absolute joy. You have survived the wilderness. You have navigated the valley of the shadow of death. You have faced the absolute worst the enemy had to offer, and you have emerged completely victorious, not because of your own fragile strength, but because you allowed me to be your fierce defender. The darkness tried to bury you, but it only succeeded in planting you exactly where I needed you to be, so that you could blossom into this incredible season of abundance. Breathe in the fragrant air of this holy place. The atmosphere around you is absolutely thick with the reality of my fulfilled promises. Every word I have ever spoken over your life is coming to pass right in front of your eyes. The waiting is over. The striving is over. The desperate, exhausting fight for your life is completely over. You are sitting in the magnificent, radiant light of a completed victory. Let that truth anchor your soul so deeply that nothing in this world can ever shake you again. As you sit here completely overwhelmed by the goodness of what I have done, a new understanding is blooming in your heart. You are realizing that this profound rescue was never just about pulling you out of a crisis. This entire journey, from the darkest moments in the valley to the brightest light of this table, had a much greater purpose. You have been beautifully transformed, fundamentally changed by the grace you have received. And as you look out at the world from this place of untouchable authority and complete victory, you are finally ready to understand what you must do with the immense blessing I have poured into your life. The immense blessing I have poured into your life was never meant to be hidden away in fear, nor was it meant to simply be a temporary relief from your pain. You are finally ready to understand that this profound internal transformation, this deep, unshakable peace you now feel echoing in your chest, is the permanent, unshakable foundation for the beautiful new life you are about to step into. I did not bring you to this magnificent table just to give you a momentary break from the relentless exhaustion of your past. I brought you here to permanently change the entire trajectory of your future. As you sit here completely saturated in the warmth of my grace, the physical world outside this sacred space is actively shifting, bending, and rearranging itself to perfectly align with the spiritual victory you have just received. The external miracle you have prayed for with such desperate, heartbroken tears is now beautifully, flawlessly manifesting in your daily reality. It is no longer a distant, fragile hope flickering on the horizon. It is happening right now, perfectly synchronized with the quiet, triumphant rest I have permanently established within your weary soul. Every heavy iron door that the world slams shut in your face is currently swinging wide open, and every terrifying mountain that stood stubbornly in your path has been completely and forever leveled by my command. Notice how beautifully everything is falling into place, with effortless, breathtaking precision. The frantic, exhausting human striving that completely defined your long wilderness season is entirely gone. You do not have to frantically force the broken pieces of your life back together anymore. I want you to look closely at the massive, undeniable breakthroughs occurring right now in your finances, your health, your family, and your deepest calling, and recognize the unmistakable fingerprints of my boundless love all over them. The very things you thought would take decades of agonizing labor to rebuild are being instantly and miraculously restored by my hand. The perfect timing you once doubted in the dark is now revealing itself in the light as an absolute masterpiece of divine orchestration. I withheld absolutely nothing from you, my child. I simply waited for the exact perfect moment when your heart was strong enough, completely free from the suffocating grip of anxiety and the heavy poison of bitterness to hold the massive weight of this glory without it crushing your spirit. Your internal transformation was the sacred key that fully unlocked the earthly manifestation of my greatest promises. Because you have bravely learned to feast on my peace while in the direct presence of your enemies, you will now watch those very enemies entirely scatter, as my overwhelming blessing overtly overtakes every single area of your life. Now, my beloved child, I am giving you a powerful, intimate, and loving invitation. The time for sitting defensively at this table has drawn to a gentle, glorious close. Look deeply into my eyes one more time. I am reaching out, my hand to you across the banquet, inviting you to stand up. I want you to rise from this chair, not as a weary, traumatized survivor, bracing for another inevitable attack, but as a fully restored, completely triumphant heir to my heavenly kingdom. As you stand, feel the incredible, breathtaking lightness in your spirit. The heavy burdens you dragged into this place, the suffocating grief, the paralyzing fear of failure, The bitter, jagged wounds of past betrayals have all been permanently left behind on the floor. You are completely unburdened. You are stepping away from this feast completely whole, entirely healed, and fearlessly ready for the brilliant future I have carefully prepared for you. You are not returning to the old battlefield. Hear me very clearly on this. You are absolutely not going back to the cold trenches of your past. That specific war is permanently over. The ground you are about to walk on is entirely new sovereign territory. You do not have to leave the profound peace of this table behind as you step back out into your daily life. The magnificent provision, the overflowing cup of joy, and the unshakable stillness you experienced in this holy place are now permanently woven into the very fabric of your spiritual DNA. You are carrying the atmosphere of the table with you everywhere you go. When you walk into a room, you will literally bring my supernatural calm with you, shifting the atmosphere around you. When you face an unexpected challenge tomorrow or the day after, you will absolutely not revert to your old exhausting habits of panic, anger, and desperate control. Instead, you will simply smile, remembering the absolute impotence of the enemy, and you will rest immediately in the exact same peace that anchored you here. You have learned the sacred life-altering secret of living your everyday life from a place of completed victory. Rather than exhausting yourself fighting for a victory you hope to one day achieve. Your mind has been completely renewed. Your heart has been perfectly secured. I want you to live every single day from this moment forward in a posture of joyful, breathless expectation. I want you to wake up in the morning, open your eyes, and genuinely wonder what beautiful, unexpected blessing I have planned to surprise you with next. The dark, heavy days of always expecting the worst outcome are gone forever. The agonizing season of constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop has been entirely replaced by a glorious season of continuous, unhindered worship. When you look at the miraculous changes unfolding rapidly in your circumstances, let your immediate natural response be a quiet, radiant gratitude. You do not have to analyze the miracle. You do not have to obsess over the logistics of how I am doing it. You absolutely do not have to worry about whether or not you are worthy enough to deserve it. You only have to open your hands and receive it. You are my deeply loved, perfectly chosen child, and giving you the desires of your heart brings me an immense, overwhelming joy. You are finally experiencing the absolute, undeniable reality that my goodness and my mercy are aggressively pursuing you, tracking you down, and overtaking you all the days of your glorious life. We are going to walk through this brilliant new chapter exactly as we are right now, hand in hand, intimately connected in constant, joyful communion. You will never have to navigate the painful complexities of this world alone again. When the path suddenly turns, I will gently and clearly guide you. When there is a difficult decision to make, you will hear my quiet, reassuring voice right behind you, telling you exactly which way to go. The frantic, terrifying isolation of the wilderness has been permanently replaced by the profound, comforting reality of my constant, unwavering presence. Look down at your hands once more as you stand here. They are completely empty of weapons, empty of anxiety, and empty of frantic human striving. They are wimwe, deepen, perfectly positioned to receive the continuous daily outpouring of my extravagant favor. Everything you thought you lost, forever in the fire, is being returned to you right now, multiplied and overflowing beyond your wildest imagination. Your deepest relationships are being beautifully and tenderly restored. Your physical body is flourishing in divine, supernatural health. Your earthly resources are abundant, and your heavenly purpose is incredibly brilliantly clear. Take one final deep restorative breath of this holy atmosphere. Let the absolute certainty of my boundless love settle completely into the very marrow of your bones. You are profoundly loved. You are permanently changed. You are completely, wonderfully at rest. The agonizing wait is officially over. The shadows have fully surrendered to the spectacular dawn. Arise in peace, my beautiful child. Step boldly and fearlessly into the radiant light of your new reality, and walk freely, powerfully, and joyfully in the absolute center of your completed miracle. As you step forward, let this prayer seal the journey in your heart. Heavenly Father, thank you for the breathtaking miracle of this exact moment. Thank you for never leaving my side through the darkest, most terrifying valleys, for intentionally setting a magnificent table of peace right in the middle of my chaos, and for flawlessly fighting the battles I was far too exhausted to fight. I fully release every lingering fear, every painful past hurt, and every single shadow of doubt into your capable, loving hands. I eagerly receive your overflowing joy. I completely accept your perfect timing. I embrace the beautiful, abundant, and victorious future you have so lovingly prepared for me. Help me to walk every single day of my life in this unshakable confidence, never once forgetting that my greatest victory was not something I had to desperately achieve, but a magnificent gift entirely secured by your boundless, infinite love. In your holy and precious name, amen.